Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Michigan Innovation Podcast. And I have with me today Mr. Sheldon Smith from Ann Arbor. Hi, Sheldon.
I
How are you today?
am excited and a little apprehensive.
Oh, you're going to do great. Don't
Thank you,
worry. You're
Rose.
awesome. You're going to do fantastic. So, I met Sheldon a few months ago, and we have so much in common. Sheldon and I met at a business workshop down in Livonia. And then, funny enough, we're both writing a book at about the same time and also starting some new businesses. And so, before we get into the business, the innovation, which he has tons of that, we're going to talk a little bit more about who Sheldon is and where did he grow up and how did he end up in Michigan, or maybe he never left. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Sheldon.
Thank you, Rose. Uh, I was born in San Diego, California.
I didn't know
Uh,
that.
Now you do. And lived there for about 3 years. We moved to Michigan, Dexter, when I was 3. Stayed in Dexter through kindergarten and then moved to Ann Arbor, which I've been a resident of Ann Arbor ever since about 6 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. And went to the University of Michigan there, graduated in architecture, uh, have done quite a bit of building, quite a bit of design. Have, after graduate school, worked with a company that was transformed from losing money to making money. And I hired in as a draftsman. And during the time I was there, uh, all of us at the company turned the company around from losing money to profit. And I found that very enjoyable.
Mm, that is rewarding. So that is fantastic. So how often do you come up to the northern Michigan?
All this part of seeing it, northern Michigan, as a child, we traveled here. We stayed about 10 miles from here several times in the summer. Uh, so half our vacations as a family we spent in Michigan. And
Hmm.
we'd go to the UP, the Porcupine Mountains, go up the coast, all around the coast, and on 4 or 5 occasions stayed in Cadillac.
Fantastic. I love it. Talking about innovation, one of the hotbeds of innovation in Michigan is and always has been Ann Arbor. How lucky are you to get to live there?
It has been fun. Uh, I think of all the adventures that we had as my brother and myself and the kids in our neighborhood, the things we were doing that were creative, building, uh, then going through school. I didn't appreciate school until I got into the university or got into college, uh, and then eventually the university. From where I was living, I ran and walked to the university almost every day. And looking back at my age and my time, I'm thinking all that exercise was really good for my health today.
Absolutely. You gotta move. And it's obvious that you have been keeping your fitness all your life. So, thank you for sharing with us about you and where you grew up and your love for Michigan and the University of Michigan and your time there. Now let's pivot this conversation to your book and your passion around what I think is so interesting is the way that you have such a way of really bringing out the best in organizations and businesses. And I love the term that you use, and that's the word flow. Could you tell us a little bit about your concepts around flow and really bringing the best out of the efficiencies in a business in your innovative approaches?
Sure. So the title of the book that I'm writing is Five pillars of phenomenal flow. And I was looking at the things, not only the flow that we set up as far as systems and from point to point to point and flow, but the flow of where you're in a state of flow. For many people, I think of basketball players, that they're just very focused on moving the ball, their motion, and getting the ball into the basket and interacting with their teams. The teams that tend to play the best are where they're not playing the other team, but they're playing to the best of their teammates and moving the ball into the basket. And that they're so all focused and not distracted by other things. And I think of times in design and seeing other people that I know in architecture school, we'd do design work and you would go days into a design and not eat, not sleep, but just be creating that design to bring it forward. And then in work, doing design things that you would just get immersed into what you were doing. And it was a joy to bring it forward from a design standpoint, but it was a blast also to see it actually being tangibly created and brought into the marketplace. And that was fun. It's fun.
Really is. And when you and I were talking a little bit earlier today, and my perspective when I've been in flow in creating our electronic medical record or even cleaning the house, it's a moment when you, like you said, you just forget everything and you're just in that moment, you're creating, and time just passes by and you just are creating, and that is a fantastic feeling. And so if you can translate that into a whole organization, now we know what flow means personally, but what you have with your business is that you bring phenomenal flow. And I love the way you have the two F, or the two, I know it's not an F, but they sound like an F, the phenomenal flow. What a great, linguistically, I think that sounds so cool. And
Alliteration.
it's, yes, to that point. But you do that with organizations and businesses. And so I know you have a, an acronym that comes through as the word FLOWS. Can you
Yes.
take us through your 5 pillars?
Okay. So function, the main focus of the function was removing obstacles, addressing problems that people bring into stuck situations in their organizations, how they're addressing their goals, the unsticking, creating flow around the achievements to establish phenomenal flow. Leadership, emphasizing pathways of infrastructure building, the metaphors of scouting paths, making trails, building pipelines, uh, establishing flow, mentoring the environment for the success of the organization. Objective orientation, incorporating active inference in models.
Right. And that's the O. So F is functional, L is leadership, and now we're on to O, which is objectivity.
Objective orientations.
Okay.
So I was looking at the comparison of the two of when is it objective or subjective.
Oh, that's a distinction.
So when I say phenomenal, phenomenology tends to be subjective. It's more emotional, it's more indescript, but it's significant as far as how you come into flow. Objective is very distinctive, sharply measured. It's more difficult to measure the phenomenology or the phenomenal events that occur that bring you into flow. Many people have experienced flow, even particularly teams in an organization. I believe you want to bring into existence is how do you coach, how do you mentor, such that not only do individuals can step into flow and play their best game or be their best in the time, and you come in and out of flow all the time, but that you stay in flow with your team to bring things into existence to improve not only the company, but the contribution the company is making to the world, community, others. So,
Fantastic. Perfect.
and then I talk about word centric, or W, and so much in how we language things impacts the outcome. How we describe things impacts our emotions, the actions we take or don't take. So paying attention to the language, that it's accurate, I want to say acutely accurate, but the precision around that. And then we look at systems and the strategies that laying out the systems that we're flowing through and interacting, from the functionality, leadership, the objectives, which are measurable, the word centrics, which tends to be more of the languaging and the phenomenology of what's a word mean, and paying attention to that. The strategic systems and strategies, when we've laid a system out, we measure how things are moving through that system. The strategies are how we're interacting with those systems. Hence, flows, functional, leadership, objectively oriented, word centric, systems and strategies.
Excellent. Wow. That is I can see why those are the 5 pillars of phenomenal flow. It looks like you're really looking at functionality and then people with leadership and then looking at specific objectives and then making sure that the proper, words that you use, the language models that you adopt are really leading, contributing, focusing into the flow of the project, and then bringing systems in to strategically keep it all together when you have such a big team. Systems are critical, wouldn't you say?
Uh, Even with my partner and 2 partners, and the systems that we're setting up to be able to deliver this system, we're spending weeks mapping out the preliminary landscape of how this will be presented and carried forward, and even internally.
Hmm.
But the objective is, for us, is that we have a plan in place that, while each company and each group of people, it's very unique to their needs, and we want to listen for what is needed that's specific of the uniqueness,
Hmm.
but then how we implement it such that we are able to grow the company. If the company is in a distress situation, like the one company that I was working with out of graduate school, how we evaluate where they are, how we stabilize where they are, how we make the changes to bring them into growth.
So that's your sweet spot, is a company that is stagnated, maybe a second stage company that maybe was maybe acquired and then modified and then resold
What
again.
we've seen sometimes in companies, that they are uh, right in the right spot, that it makes sense to acquire them. Uh, in that acquisition, the people acquiring them are looking at making it very profitable in 5 years and then reselling the company. But in that process, we've also seen where those companies have been hollowed out,
Hmm.
and that the new structure after the resell is not enjoying the growth that they could enjoy.
And you guys come in and apply flow tactics, these 5 pillars of flow, and really turn the company around, is what I'm hearing.
The idea is to be able to measure and strategize and implement the systems and all the practices that are necessary to bring them into a growth pattern and contribution to themselves and others.
Awesome. Well said. Very well said. I love that description of flow and really transferring flow from an individual moment to a corporate moment or to a company-wide experience. How do the people that work it, I know the executives probably appreciate it. What are you hearing from the roar on the floor, from the folks that are deploying the tactics?
Well, I go back to the company that we 400 plus people turned around. And I remember one time one of the one of the machinists coming to me. We were about to destroy a mill deliberately because we wanted the mill to run a lot faster, and we knew the steel we were feeding into it was potentially problematic for the speed of the rotation. And he said, "Well, if we take it to 10 times the speed, it's going to blow up." And I said, "Your point?" Uh, and I said, I would have loved to be out there, but I have to continue working on design. And he's kind of looking at me very upset that we're going to destroy a piece of equipment on the floor. That was, but we looked at the equipment, the tooling, and other engineers, and that piece of equipment was like the third best operating piece of equipment on the floor. And what we were looking at is lesser pieces of equipment. We kind of identified we were going to rebuild that piece of equipment, but we did want to know the speed of the steel that could run through it. And it did disintegrate, and we had shields up and stuff like that. But then we took that machine all down, and it wasn't capable of the tolerances of design that we were asking of it. None of them were at the time, but the other two that stayed in operations were the closest we had. We rebuilt the third one, which we destroyed, but we got information out of that. We rebuilt it that was completely capable of what we wanted it to do, both in speed and tolerances. And then the second most capable machine, we tore down, rebuilt, made it fully capable, third. And now we have a bank of what used to be a bank of 10. We've got three mills turning that were outproducing a bank of 10. So
Got what you wanted.
better tolerances, faster throughput, and 7 machines we didn't need any.
And how did that machinist feel after you were through?
Well, he was alarmed because he thought nobody was paying any attention to him. I did not ease his concerns. And I said, yes, I expect that's true. Exactly what you're saying is true and going to happen.
Sometimes tough love, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think of Musk blowing up airplanes
right.
or rocket ships.
Right.
And I go,
you
you cannot know what he gained in those few minutes. You can't know that on the computer, on the drawing board. You learn so much so fast, particularly if it blows up right when he predicted it.
Oh, my gosh. Who would see that? You would see that, Sheldon.
Well,
Everyone sees,
I knew what he was doing when he did that.
everyone sees a disaster and you see information.
I see possibilities beyond what we're learning there. And like I didn't know, but I was fairly certain because the other engineers too. And I wanted to be out on the floor, but I couldn't be at the time that this was taking place. But I also knew that the way we set up and looked at the kind of data that we we're collecting, that was going to move how we were handling the steel through our company, how we are going to run our mills in the future. Yeah, and it made a big difference. And that was just one part of, I don't know how many different tweaks that we did in turning the company around.
I know that another key element to you is mentoring. And, we were talking about the machines blowing up and people being surprised, but I also know that mentoring is more quickly deployed with some of your programming and phenomenal flow. You mentioned here that you do there's a developing a mentoring program to more quickly deploy some of the programming of phenomenal flow.
Now, we talked about this a little bit this morning. A lot of times when what I've seen and some other people that I'm working with have also observed that you you have responses. Certain people in the company have certain responsibilities, and they know what they know, but they don't know what they don't know. And if you can pair up with coaching or mentoring, uh, that can help bring the insights faster and quicker, that you get from where you are to where you wanting to go. Uh, I, I I have a personal coach. I met you when we were in a seminar with
Hmm.
her.
Hmm.
Uh, Most of my friends are either coaching or have coaches in their businesses
Hmm.
and mentors. And I was surprised in the past month or so, some people telling me, "Oh, you've been mentoring us." Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that.
Yes, it happens when you're not even looking, right? That's so cool though, that you're able to really pass on um, knowledge without even knowing it, just by being who you are.
Yes, I'm grateful for now the discoveries of that has been occurring. I don't think I was as aware of it even 7 months ago as that I am today.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I know another key element, what you work with are key performance indicators and really those objectives.
For sure.
How do you really zoom in on the key performance indicators that are really critical for, let's say, a new client? How do you know what to pay attention to from those objectives?
So we have a couple different onboarding sequences of how questions that we'd be asking. I have observed that sometimes just in a as we talk or others talk, that I ask how the company is doing and what are your key performance indicators of specifics, or do you know what your market segmentation is? Do you know who your key clients are? And sometimes I get surprised that people don't know this, and among the C-suite, they should know this stuff right off the top,
Hmm.
and a lot don't, or at least many that I've talked to don't. And then when you get down to the departments, they're not even sure the hierarchy. Well, a little bit of a tangent here. So I've seen silos in companies and there's not good communication from the side. So I listen to how communications is flowing, even watching in our conversations and dialogues, how that's flowing. And I can sometimes see now how does that project into how things are moving through their company. And oh, no wonder you are where you're at.
Hmm.
So
How many are, let's say, from a C-suite perspective, how many key performance indicators are too many? How many is not enough? How do you like rein that in or broaden it? Do you have like a sweet spot, a number of key perform, or do you do it based on function? Like, here are KPIs for finance, here are KPIs for manufacturing, or how do you see those being measured? Or
I like your visions, Rose,
yeah,
that you're seeing those various things, all true. So one of my partners and myself, we were saying, if we're on a desert island, three of us, that we each get a facts sheet of how the business is running
right.
and or the businesses are running. And from that sheet, we know that it's okay or not okay. And if it's not okay, we know exactly what needs to be done as far as drilling down into it. They have the answers on the next facts that it can be brought into. control. So always you're going to see variations through and then you have upper control, lower control. Everything's good as long as it's in control. As it starts to go out of control on either end, you make the adjustments to bring it back into control. As you have all those identified and the flow is throughout. So we'd start out in a company, tangent, look at one stream going through the company, how that's flowing, whether it's a product line or a type of information that's going through. And what I see most often is gaps. Sometimes there's things that get just stuck, that paperwork or information will be stuck in a silo and be very protected versus that it should be going through at a certain rate. And how does that shift it? If it goes through without resistance, where's there the resistance, lowering the resistance of that flow? Did I answer your question?
Well, yeah, of course you did. And it's all very, very insightful, and that the key for what you're describing to me is being really optimizing the flow of whether it's the process, a manufacturing process or an information system. You really keep an eye on those KPIs, and if they get out of whack, you adjust.
That you've got the measure and that you see the adjustments. And then we have talked about in tangents. I'm really good on tangents. Keep me to script.
You're doing great. This is
So
very fascinating.
so we are looking at a tangent and then pull me back to script.
Okay.
We're looking at a large slinky. That's that, and you fold it into a toroidal system, and that toroidal, and you can fold it into a ball. And we were just playing with this in visualization last week. The ball, though it may be a geodesic dome or a ball, is not as stable as when that slinky is folded into a toroidal position. And the flow on the outside goes to the center. And so we're envisioning the 5 columns being the central section of that slinky as the flow comes around in the slinky and comes through the center. And now that we have that, now we start to get into kind of the phenomenology of stuff, that it's, if you have multiple slinkies and each column could be that core of that slinky, how's that information flow, and what is the tangibility of information that moves quickly? So we're looking at, we can lay out systems very linear, and you can have silos, but how do you have an organization that is so lean that information flows effortlessly all the way through it at speed, and all the things that need to take place at that speed is more rapid, that there's more information accurately processed, that it becomes knowledge, that knowledge is able to be leveraged for wisdom, and that wisdom is actionable to where it needs to be applied.
Awesome.
More discussions.
Absolutely. And so I think that's very fascinating that you have that visualization of the slinky and all the different shapes that it can take and the optimal shape.
And the stabilization of them.
Right.
What's the structure that's most stable, that is most functional for purpose?
Yeah, it's very cool. And well, with that, I know that I wanted to just switch gears a little bit and talk to you a little bit more about your what's happening on the home front with some of your. I know you really love nature, and your background is in. We're going to switch gears a little bit, talk a little bit about um, the your love for nature and what happened this morning from your township.
Oh, so in my backyard, well, kind of my backyard, the property, part of my backyard and the property immediately adjacent to my backyard, uh, we have a rookery of blue herons. And I got a call from one of the people that works with the township that's at the University of Michigan. And she was out there today counting bird nests in the marsh area behind
It's
my,
700 acres,
yeah,
right?
just under
Just under
700.
seven with the adjacent properties and your properties. Wonderful.
And when I first spotted the rookery several years ago, it was maybe 25 nests. I it's spread its footprint out greater. There's uh, development going on around it, but the township has worked with the developers such that their development of moving equipment and construction was timed that they were less likely to disrupt the rookery, which it looks like they've been very successful in doing that. And the reports I see after today's observations, I trust will show that things are good. That it, I just had a blast seeing the blue herons coming in to the backfields with sticks, and then seeing them 3 miles away when I remember they're flying with sticks in their beaks. It's 3 miles out. Where are they going? Oh, they're flying to their rookery, building their nests. And I don't know why a stick 3 miles away is more relevant to them than something closer by, but that's what a stick is.
And now there are almost 100 nests,
I'm guessing,
maybe.
I'm guessing they're probably 100 nests. I will see the numbers in the next
Yeah.
week or so.
So the reason I brought that up is that I believe that there's some synergy between your process with phenomenal flow and what you see happening with the blue herons in your area. There's some kind of growth and improvement in their ecosystem because of some of the changes that maybe the township made. And and to your point is that flow is something that's natural,
Should be.
and in whether it's the geometric formation and you take advantage of that with the slinky analysis, or really trying to work with the ecology to create a flow for the blue heron.
Mm-hmm.
There's a theme I see going through your work.
Absolutely so. And even as we watch the communications of people around us, that you can hear the frequency shift. Some of my friends talk about frequency. So what's the frequency that conversation is occurring at? What's the frequency that business is operating in? And how do you shift that it is in tune, that it becomes in harmony? When it's in harmony, when there's almost a symphony. I used to like in architectural design. How does the picture, how does the building, how does it interact with its people? How does it interact with the environment, the landscape and stuff? And it's kind of a symphonic, but looking at the same thing in a business. There are some
Absolutely.
things that work, some things that don't.
Well, and then I'm going to ask you the elephant that's in everybody's rooms these days, and that is AI. How flows is your acronym FLOWS, functional leadership, objective words, and systems. And we can't talk about systems these days without seeing how AI will impact. How do you see AI impacting harmonic resonance and flow within your systems approach?
Sure. One of my friends asked me how many robots I work with, or how many hours I spend with robots a day. And I kind of thought, oh, I spend 6 hours a day interacting with robots. So if you know it or not, you probably are interacting with robots on an ongoing basis today, and it's only going to become more relevant for most of us in the industrial world. We were talking earlier about large language models and how, as we look at the AI and how it collects information, how it regurgitates, brings back up the information that was put into it, associating it with the different words that we get, the sentences that we get usage. And at what point does that become knowledge, that we can use that knowledge in our synthesis of it? And that at what systems, and I use the model of the slinky as being different patterns of planes of information, that if multiple planes of that information, if you get a line through those planes of information, that you start to have knowledge. But then when does that knowledge at speed, which we're not quite there yet, become wisdom?
Mhm.
And that's a frontier that we will probably see.
Yes, we will see that. Well, I hope that you are picking up what we're putting down and that flow is innovative, even for our ecosystem or our companies and factories, and especially as individuals. And so I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about the undammed project. What is the undammed and app assessment that you give to people? What's up with that?
So about the time we first met,
Hmm.
one of my friends, we were talking about how do we communicate? How do you see stuckness in people's lives? And he said, "You're all damned."
Oh dear.
To the group of friends we were talking on this.
Sure.
And and shoot, how do we break that undamming, open the flow up?
Right.
And in our personal lives, how do we?
Well, I know when they try to get rid of a beaver dam, they have to use dynamite almost. So we're trying to create a flow, and we have to get that thinking of a dam. Usually, it takes dynamite.
It can take a lot. We were talking about when you can show somebody such that they see and momentarily that they have a breakthrough in flow, or that they see that they're undammed, they're no longer constrained, they're unstuck, and they're
Yeah.
and then the next day they're back to where they were. What happened? So they didn't have the coaching, they did not have the mentoring, that once they had that breakthrough, that they were able to maintain that breakthrough, then leverage it, that it became habit, it became 30 days, pretty much, sometimes 90 days, that you need to be practicing what you're doing to get things anchored in the new way of behaving and existing. So that's where we're talking about coaching and mentoring. Maybe coaching gets you moving the ball better and on the court effectively. Mentoring, in my mind, tends to be more deeper in the shifts.
Hmm.
What's the question again, please?
No, I think you did a perfect job. You talked about the importance of becoming undammed, and I mentioned sometimes it takes a dynamite, and I think what you brought was perfect. It takes habit change. It takes repeating until you get it right, whether it's 30 days or 90 days. You go in and you extract, you can't really blow up everything or break everything. Sometimes with people, it takes a little bit of habit changing and mentoring and
Well,
guidance.
sometimes if you go in and break somebody, they don't recover from the breakage
Right.
unless you can hold
Yeah.
them through that.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do that
No,
very often.
no, not very
You don't
often.
want to do that very often.
No,
Uh,
like a thing called PTSD.
exactly. But see, there are patterns that you can go in and embrace that PTSD shift it, that you see it, and then embrace it, that it is able to be healed very at speed.
Right. It's,
Uh,
yeah, our friend Tony talks about patterns a lot. Tony
yes,
Robbins,
yes, yes.
pattern recognition, and how long does it take a breakthrough? He always goes second,
Exactly so.
a second.
Well,
If you make that decision.
well, yeah, Christ talked about uh, healing, and it was not that the healing was by their faith, their beliefs, but you make that breakthrough in a second, and you have that, and you know the onion skin's been peeled back, ah, and relief, and you can see it in somebody's expression, body language. They had that moment, but will they have that an hour from now? If you're embraced and held and reinforced, you'll have it an hour from now. Will you have it in a day from now? Still, will you have it 3 days a week? Maybe not. But if you work on exercises and stuff that you hold it for more than 3 days, then you can get through maybe 3 weeks. And then you reinforce that, and then maybe you have set up the shifts and the habits that not only did you make it through 30 days, you make it through 90 days, you make it through 120.
Right.
But unless you have the core of a lot of the great founders in this country of industry would have masterminds.
Yes.
And among one another. And it wasn't that they were conspiring, but it was that they were striving to uplift one another. And that sometimes in some environments you feel very, very isolated. True. And you're trying to move things, and
you get very stuck.
How do you do it? You're
Well,
stuck.
you're stuck. And the thing I love about masterminds are really the harmony, and getting back to harmony and frequency. A true mastermind, you're all on the same wavelength, and they really can get a lot done. I know that, like you say, the greats from American industry would talk about that. Dale Carnegie, or not Dale, but Andrew Carnegie.
Among them.
Andrew Carnegie and Napoleon Hill talked a lot about the Mastermind Alliance in some of his books. And I love that. And I believe in that too. But it's not just, the thing I love about your technique, Sheldon, is that you take that unstuck, that whole flow, the whole thing, and you bring it to the enterprise. You bring it to that second stage company that really needs to kind of get back on track, or get on track, so that they can see and really give the world the contribution that company is meant to do, whether it's financial returns or a great product, great place to work, great contributor to a community. I think that's what your company and your book is really going to do for the world. And I'm proud that you're a Michigan company. This is the Michigan Innovation Podcast. And so I think what you're doing is so innovative, taking that whole concept of flow, applying it to second stage and business. And it's so relatable to people, because we all know what it's like when you have that blessed moment of flow. And so before we end up this,
I hope we all know what it's like.
I do. I
do
certainly
too.
do. So I hope you do too. And so, like we do at the end of our podcast, I want to ask you, Sheldon, is there anything that you want to share with our Michigan Innovation Podcast audience before we wrap this up?
I am delighted to be here. I'm so thankful that
Well,
this has flowed as you made possible.
We did it.
Yes, thank
We
you.
finally did it. Yes. Well, thank you. And, you've got a lot coming out this year. So if you don't mind, can I invite you back in maybe next January?
Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I really appreciate everyone out there and in Michigan and outside of Michigan. And until next time, bye. You did great. Well done.
You got me to a place that I was comfortable talking and stuff.
Good.
And thank you.
You are great.